Are you familiar with Paul's so-called conversion experience? Can you describe it? Why don't you try? Tell me, is a horse involved? The scene of Paul's experience on the road to Damascus, reported by the author we call Luke 3 times in his Acts of the Apostles, is familiar even to those who have never read the Bible. Usually, a horse is reported as being involved. The longest of these 3 accounts is given in Acts chapter 9, verses 3 through 19, where, on his way to Damascus to imprison disciples of Jesus, a light from the sky suddenly flashes around Paul. The report says Paul falls to the ground, and a voice says, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" Paul inquires as to who is speaking to him. The voice replies, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." The voice commands Paul to go to Damascus, where he will be told what to do. According to Acts chapter 9, verses 3 through 19, the men traveling with Paul are dumbstruck, hear the voice, but cannot see anyone. This disagrees with what is said in Acts chapter 22, verses 6 through 16, where it is reported that they saw the light, but did not hear the voice. These 3 different accounts, all in the same document we call Acts, give different, sometimes contradictory details of this same event. Basically, they all agree that Paul is led blind into Damascus, but not on horseback. The cosmic Lord Jesus then sends a disciple named Ananias to Paul. Ananias answers the call and goes, lays hands on Paul, and Paul is baptized. An invitation. Take the time with a notepad and pen handy to read over these 3 different accounts in Acts about the so-called conversion story of Paul. Take careful notes as to what characters experience, do, and say, as well as how each account agrees and disagrees. The scene of Paul's experience on the road to Damascus, reported by Luke 3 times in Acts of the Apostles, is familiar even to those who have never read the Bible. Such familiarity is often spurious because details of the recollection, like the popular mistaken idea that Paul was riding a horse, simply aren't supported by the text of Acts. People assume Paul was on a horse, no doubt thanks to a plethora of religious art. But things become even more interesting when we compare Luke's 3 reports of Paul's conversion with Paul's own references to this same event in his own writings. Not only does Paul, in his own writings, mention nothing about a horse, his letters completely lack many details Luke includes, such as traveling to Damascus and meeting somebody named Ananias. From where did Luke get all that? Did he invent those details? Galatians chapter 1, verse 15 through 16. Paul writes, "But when God, the God of Israel, who from my mother's womb had set me apart and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, so that I might proclaim him to those Israelites living among the peoples, I did not immediately consult flesh and blood." 1 Corinthians 15, verses 8 through 9. Paul writes, "Last of all, as to one born abnormally, he, the risen Jesus, appeared to me. For I am the least of the apostles, not fit to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the ecclesia of God." 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6. "For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' has shone in our hearts to bring to light the knowledge of the glory of God on the face of Christ." Philippians chapter 3, verse 12. "It is not that I have already taken hold of it, or have already attained perfect maturity, but I continue my pursuit in hope that I may possess it, since I have indeed been taken possession of by Christ." Interesting. 4 texts that leave out so many of the details included in Acts. We have to ask the question, what really happened to Paul on the occasion of his so-called conversion experience? My friends, there is in the New Testament more than one Paul. Contemporary biblical scholars are generally agreed that the Acts of the Apostles is not a reliable source for factual information about Paul. In Acts, Luke has intentionally reshaped Paul into a different person than the one he actually was. In the New Testament, there are at least 2 different Pauls. the historical Paul, mostly discoverable through his own 7 undisputed letters, and the Lucan Paul found in the book of Acts, which is mostly a fiction. Look at the difference in the waves of the first Jesus movements. As you go from left to right, you go forward in time, from the year 30 Common Era to the end of the 1st century. The second wave has Paul's authentic letters. It is in the 4th wave that we encounter Luke's fictive Paul. Paul is writing his letters in the 50s. Luke Acts is composed as late as the 90s. The historical Paul was a citizen of neither Rome nor Tarsus. If he had factually been a Roman citizen, that means a person enjoying the privileges of someone with Roman patrician status, it would have been impossible for Paul to have received as many beatings as he reports, and of which he, in classic Mediterranean fashion, boasts. This and similar information about the historical Paul, uncovered by contemporary biblical scholars, is readily available in many studies and commentaries. What then can be said about Luke's 3 times reported and 3 times interpreted account of Paul's so-called conversion experience on the road to Damascus? The one common element found in both Luke's accounts and Paul's own writings about the so-called conversion experience is that God definitely called Paul through an alternate state of consciousness experience. Altered states of consciousness Paul experienced more than once in his life. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 6 through 7a. Paul writes, "Although if I should wish to boast, I would not be foolish, for I would be telling the truth, but I refrain so that no one may think more of me than what he sees in me or hears from me because of the abundance of the revelations." Let's talk more about the call of Paul next time.